Arizona football shows a very dynamic possibility on offense, but also some very glaring holes on the defensive side. Can they be corrected?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, Mike Luke, and thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. This show is brought to you today by 5 Hour Energy. Check it out. Everybody uses 5 Hour Energy, and that is because it works. There's a lot of great things that are going on with 5 Hour Energy, and you will thank me later when it comes to that. Okay, but now let's talk a lot about Arizona football and everything that's going into this. Now, Arizona beats New Mexico, and honestly, it was a game that Arizona should have been able to win, obviously, and they were able to take advantage of an overmatched New Mexico team in the second half. That was obviously a very good thing. But we'll start with the offense, which was obviously very good, and then we're going to get to the defensive side here in a second. Now, Noah Fifita and T-Mac, they are absolutely fantastic. This was a very curious move by the group by New Mexico to say we are going to single cover T-Mac and we are not going to give any safety help. We are not going to give anything. And T-Mac said, okay, if you want to do that, watch this. And he went for over 300 yards and he went for 4 touchdowns at 30 yards a pop. Listen, we talked about it, how T-Mac looked like he was ready to rock and roll, like he looked like he was back, and he definitely showed that he was back. Like I said, just a very, very impressive performance by a player that I think you can make the case is the best player in college football, and if he's not the best player in college football, then he is right there. He is that good, and enjoy him while you can because he's not going to be here after this year. Obviously, with him and Noah Fifita will always have a very dynamic connection with T-Mac because they have played together since they were in the womb. That's how long and far back they go. Now, the other receivers didn't really do anything, but I don't really care that the other receivers didn't do anything because if you're going to leave the best wide receiver in the country in single coverage, you should throw to him every time. That's a solution in search of a problem if you don't throw it to him each time, and New Mexico paid for it. I don't think you're going to see that much more this season. I don't think, like I said, you're asking for trouble if you do that because, well, again, T-Mac has shown time and time again that he will burn you and he will take care of business. He's just a different level football player, and we saw that again. We were reminded of that. I think a lot of people were curious about how the foot would look. Well, the foot looks just fine. And the other thing too with him is that he is just too big for anybody. He can go up, he can overpower you. He can push you at the line of scrimmage. That is what a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL looks like. And the other thing, too, his hands. His hands are next level. He's got great ball skills. And the proverbial catch radius that everybody loves to talk about now is immense. He is just he's just a stellar football player that doesn't come through here very often. T-Mac is that dude. Noah Fifita obviously had a great game as well, but Noah's always going to have a good game because Noah just understands football. And it also helped as well that the running game between Quali Conley and Ja'Cory Crosby merits some more attention because these guys were, again, 200-plus yards almost from both of those dudes, and watching them, they both look next level. A lot of people have been talking about Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt, and rightfully so. He's an absolute stud. But at the same time, I think it's also fair to say that, Quali Conley showed a lot of people what he could do, and Quali Conley is that guy that is like I said, I think he is I would not surprise me if he was able to play in the NFL in some capacity. He's got a lot of Michael Wiley to his game, in my opinion, and that is a compliment because I'm a big fan of Michael Wiley on this show. Obviously, Michael Wiley is fantastic. But these two dudes, they're going to be your bell cows. I would love to find a way to get Rayshon Speedy Luke, a.k.a. Fam, in there a little bit more. We'll see if they're able to do that, but these two are going to be your bell cows. These are going to be the ones that really put in the work for you. And I think if you're Arizona, you feel good about it. Now, a lot of people are complaining about the offensive line. I don't get the complaint about the offensive line. Noah was barely touched, and they ran the ball wherever they wanted to. They ran the ball, and they were able to throw the ball everywhere. I don't understand the complaints about the offensive line at all. Yes, Big Rhino went out, but I would imagine Rhino is going to be just fine because, again, he was able to walk around. He wasn't on crutches. He wasn't, getting any assistance or anything. But the offensive line, I thought, was more than adequate, and I have no problem with that. And honestly, I got no problem with the offense. You might say, well, I thought Jeremiah Patterson was supposed to be good, or the tight ends. But again, if you're going to single cover T-Mac, then you should throw it to T-Mac pretty much every single time that he is around there because, again, you're probably not going to find a lot of teams that are dumb enough to do that, and you certainly found one in New Mexico. But the offense, like I said, I thought the offense was just fine, and I was enthused, too, by what Quali Conley was able to do. You could definitely see where he was a back that I think a lot of people, slept on. And probably shouldn't have because, again, he rushed for over, 2,000 yards his last 2 years at San Jose State at about 7 yards a pop. Dude's good. He and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, obviously very, very good football players. And so Arizona's deep across the board on offense. Now you might say, well, what about a quarterback? But you could say that for pretty much anybody. With Noah Fafita goes down, well, yeah, they're going to be in trouble. But like I said, any team in the country, if their starting quarterback goes down outside of a couple schools, you're probably going to be in trouble. So that is what it is. But overall, totally fine with Dino Babers, the debut of the offense and what they were able to do. Just like I said, just next level play right there, and it was very fun to watch because we've seen before sometimes coaches, when they've had really good offensive players and they don't know how to utilize them, when you have T-Mac, you don't outthink yourself. You utilize them. It's that simple. Now, we're going to get to the defensive side of the ball because there are certainly some more question marks about that. But first, something there's no question marks about, 5 Hour Energy. Check it out. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Check it out again, 5hourenergy.com. The great thing with 5 Hour Energy, too, is that it can boost you through the day. If you had a long day and you're like, all right, this is going to be difficult for me. Take some 5 Hour Energy. This is something that has been trusted for people from the beginning of its inception. 5 Hour Energy. Check it out. It works. There's all kinds of good stuff with 5 Hour Energy. And again, it helps you get through the day. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk about the defense. Listen, the defense, this was an abysmal performance. I don't think that there's any way around it, but I'm also not going to overreact to it. It was a poo performance in this first game, but there was also things that I think that they can correct. The first thing defensively was the containment was absolutely terrible. That is something that I believe that you can correct, and I think when you look at the containment, whether that was Trey Smith or even Jacob Manu on the edge, New Mexico was able to get out there and kind of do a lot of stuff that, they shouldn't have been able to do. They should not have been permitted to. So there is that. And then, and I'd love to see the defensive line be able to step its game up. Keep in mind, with the defensive line, there is talent there. There's obvious talent there. You got to be able to see it, though. We did not see that. Trey Smith kind of got pushed around in his first game. Like I said, the defensive line certainly did not stand out, but I still think a lot of that, though, is the fact that it's correctable stuff. I'll put it to you like that, and so I'm okay with that. Listen, it wasn't a great game all the way around. The cornerback situation was odd. Now, I was talking with Sheer about this, and I think Sheer made an interesting point, which, when he makes an interesting point, it's a rare one generally, so I want to, obviously highlight that. But Sheer made the point, too, with this defense that maybe they just didn't want to say or show anything because obviously Dwayne Aquina has obviously been known as a press corner defensive backs coach. That has always been his MO, and a guy who is a guy who, again, is kind of he's the Don of coaching defensive backs, cornerbacks. You didn't see that, though. You had him playing off the line of scrimmage a ton. And against good teams, I don't think that's going to work. But I think that this was maybe Arizona trying to keep their cards close to the vest, perhaps, knowing that knowing that you've got a lot of really good teams coming up here in short order, and you don't want to have to really show everything that you can do. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. Tetairoa Davis had a terrible game. Listen, with Tetairoa Davis, I'm a big fan of Tetairoa Davis. I need to be very clear about that. I think maybe the hype's gotten a little bit out of hand, though, because he does have flaws. He can be beat. Again, he's a very good football player, and he's going to play in the NFL, but he can be beat, and there are some head-scratching moments from him. Obviously, you got the 2 personal fouls, so he's going to be out first half against against NAU, which Arizona shouldn't really need him. But that was something that can't happen against good teams. If it happens against good teams, obviously Arizona is going to be in a boatload of trouble. The rest of the secondary, obviously Gunner was out. It was just a perplexing performance. Now I will say this: Genesis Smith, he's going to have to play. You got the interception. I was also a little odd to me that you really didn't see any dollar package whatsoever. That was something that I did not see occurring. I thought that there would definitely be some dollar package, but there wasn't. So there is that. But I do think that these are some correctable issues. And again, there's something about the defense that I think we need to keep in mind when talking about this, and we're going to talk about that next. But first, Ultimate College Football, HC. Download from app stores or visit ultimate/cfb.com. 100% free boost. Use code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store. Great thing about all of this is, and you will like this, is that it is fun because college football is here. With college football here, you know that you want to take advantage of these. So again, check them out. Again, 100% free boost. Use code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store, and all kinds of good games coming on. This is the way. This is a place where you can really showcase some of your knowledge. So do what a lot of people are doing and hop in there and check it out. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about some things that I think on the defensive side of the football. I don't need this to be the Desert Swarm. I don't need this to be an all-time great defensive unit. What I do need, though, is I need this to be adequate. And because, again, I think this offense is going to outscore teams, and I think it's going to outscore teams in droves. But I need this defense to be able to be kind of middle of the pack, like we talked about. I think that it still has top 4 Big 12 defensive potential, but I think you got to be able to show it, obviously, with that. Big thing, too, is that you have enough players, you have enough talent. We've talked about the DBs, we've talked about those players in there. You got to be able to show some of that, and I think that Arizona's going to be able to. I don't look for this to happen again to the defensive line. That, to me, is kind of what all of this comes back to with the defense, is that the contain was just awful. And so, and New Mexico doesn't totally suck. We got to give them a little bit of credit there. But overall, there's a lot that the defense can work with. And on the bright side, going back to the offense, this offense is going to put up a lot of points. You got a lot of weapons, and I think you're going to find teams that are actually a little bit smarter than New Mexico at some point, and they're going to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to double cover T-Mac because we don't have somebody that can single cover him. And if you don't, Arizona should do the exact same thing that it did this season, and you'll be in a much, much better shape. That's kind of where I'm at, though, with all of that. But this team, like I said, my expectations are still very much the same with this team. And I think you saw in the second half, you saw that this team was able to kind of, settle down and take care of business. It was first game of the season, all of that. So against New Mexico, though, very much looking for New Mexico, NAU. I'm looking for a complete performance, both halves, and if that Arizona does that, they're going to be in good shape. Now, the next show, we're going to break down exactly what exactly on each side of the ball Arizona can do to improve, because there are a lot of different things. And, again, there's players that probably weren't quite utilized as much, and you got to be able to keep that in mind as well. But the talent's there. You could see it, especially at the running back spot. That is a loaded running back room, and this coaching staff clearly knows that it has that, and you're going to see them rely on that a great deal, as they should, because again, like I said, don't want to overreact to one game. Arizona still won by 22 points, so let's keep that in mind. And, if that game had kept going, Arizona, I think it kind of figured it out. So, but again, big expectations against New Mexico. But we'll be back with you tomorrow. This was the post-game show. As always, thanks a ton for keeping it locked on Wildcats, and we will be back with you tomorrow.